I sat 3 days in a car with an alien. What he told me about the law of attraction shocked me. He said everything humans believe about it is a fragment of a greater truth, that our thoughts don't create reality, our vibration does. Every emotion, every word, every doubt is a command written into the fabric of existence. And for 3 days, as we drove beneath storms and stars, he showed me proof that the universe isn't responding to what we want, it's mirroring what we are. If you're hearing this, you were meant to. So before we begin, like this video, share it with someone who still believes coincidences are random, and subscribe because what you're about to learn might rewrite how you think the universe works. Tell me, where are you listening from tonight? Because as we return to that empty highway where it all began, remember the law of attraction was never about wishing. It was about remembering how to speak the universe's original language. The rain had been falling for hours, the kind of endless downpour that erases the world beyond the windshield. The road stretched into nothingness, slick black glass reflecting a sky without stars. I had been driving for 14 hours, chasing a direction that didn't feel like a destination anymore. Somewhere between exhaustion and surrender, I realized I didn't even remember why I started driving. The hum of the tires had become a lullaby, pulling me deeper into that strange border between waking and dream. The storm grew heavier. Lightning stitched the sky, revealing the skeleton of the forest that flanked the highway. Each flash felt closer, brighter, as if the storm itself were watching. I should have stopped earlier, but there was an ache in me that didn't want to stop. Still, when the road began to blur and my eyelids felt like lead, I finally pulled over beside the mile marker that looked like every other one I had passed. The wipers screeched across the glass, the air smelled like wet asphalt and something metallic, faint but distinct, like ozone mixed with electricity. I turned off the engine. For the first time all night, there was silence. The kind that feels alive, like it's waiting for something. I leaned back, letting the rain's rhythm blur my thoughts. My phone had no signal. My watch had stopped ticking. The world had shrunk to the size of that car. I closed my eyes for what I thought would be a moment. When I opened them, the headlights behind me had appeared out of nowhere, white, sharp, motionless. They didn't move, didn't flicker, just 2 perfect circles of light burning through the storm. I blinked once, twice, and then they were gone. A flash tore across the sky. The world went white for a fraction of a second, and something massive fell from the clouds ahead, slamming into the road with a sound that was less like thunder and more like the planet exhaling. My car shook. The lights on the dashboard flickered once and died. The engine cut out. Even the rain seemed to hesitate. For a heartbeat, there was only the sound of my own breathing. Then, nothing. No rain. No wind. Just stillness. Absolute and crushing. They say silence is peaceful. But that night, silence felt like awareness, like the world had stopped not by accident, but because something else had arrived. For a long moment, I couldn't move. The world outside my car was an ocean of silver rain, every droplet glowing faintly in the flash of distant lightning. The air felt heavy, thick with a pressure that didn't belong to weather. I told myself I was imagining it, that exhaustion was playing tricks on my senses. But then, through the blur of the windshield, I saw it someone, or something, standing perfectly still in the downpour. It wasn't walking toward me. It wasn't even moving, just standing there, as if it had always been there, waiting for me to notice. The storm seemed to bend around it, rain sliding off an invisible boundary, never quite touching its skin. It wasn't bright, but it wasn't dark either. Its outline shimmered faintly, like the edge of a reflection that shouldn't exist. My first thought was human. My second was not. The proportions were slightly wrong. Too tall, too still, too symmetrical. The shape had presence, but not weight. My instincts screamed danger, yet something deeper in me, something older, whispered awe. I blinked hard. When my eyes opened, it was closer. No sound, no footsteps, just distance, erased. I reached for the car's locks, fingers shaking. The metallic click of safety comforted me for a breath, but the comfort didn't last. The temperature inside the car dropped sharply, as though every atom in the air had stopped moving. My breath fogged the glass. The lights on the dashboard dimmed, and in that quiet, something spoke. Not with sound, not through the air, but inside my head. The voice was calm, precise, without tone or accent. You asked for a sign. I am the answer. The words didn't echo, they unfolded, clean and absolute. My pulse slammed in my throat. I tried to tell myself it was a hallucination, a fragment of dream born from exhaustion, but a part of me knew better. This wasn't imagined. This was intrusion. Something was inside the boundaries of my mind, rearranging thought like it belonged there. Lightning flashed again, and for an instant, I saw the figure clearly. Its skin, or what passed for it, seemed translucent, with faint currents of light moving beneath the surface like veins of liquid fire. Eyes too deep to reflect light, yet full of it. And when I blinked, the door locks clicked open on their own. No touch, no motion. The rain didn't stop, but the sound of it changed, muted, distant, as if the world outside the car no longer existed. Only that being, and me, suspended in the stillness between breaths. Somewhere deep inside, I realized something irreversible had just begun. The air inside the car had changed. It wasn't cold anymore, just weightless, as if gravity had forgotten how to behave. The figure outside no longer seemed part of the storm. The rain fell through him, or maybe around him, bending like light refracting through water. I could sense intelligence, not the kind that watches, but the kind that understands. There was no hostility in it, only precision. When the voice returned, it carried the same stillness as before, but now it felt closer, clearer, like it had learned the exact frequency of my thoughts. It called itself Jaylen, not a name spoken aloud, but an identity pressed directly into awareness, complete with a resonance that vibrated in my chest. The sound didn't exist, yet I could feel it shaping the space around me. Jaylen didn't move. He simply existed at the edge of the headlights, a luminous silhouette made of quiet energy. He said he had come with purpose, that his presence here wasn't random, nor accidental. Every choice, every direction I had taken tonight, the exhaustion, the storm, the exact moment I pulled over was part of a chain that had been pulling me toward this meeting long before I realized it. Then came the request. He needed the car for 3 days. The words appeared in my thoughts like they had always been there. 3 days to move through this world unseen. The phrasing struck me, almost human, in rhythm, yet layered with meaning I couldn't grasp. Move through your world unseen. It felt less like hiding and more like calibration, as though visibility itself were something he could choose. He offered something in return. Not material, not power, not wealth, knowledge. The truth behind a concept humans had simplified, distorted, and sold like a trick of fate, the law of attraction. He said it wasn't magic or mysticism, but architecture. The structure of consciousness, shaping the field of reality itself. The rain slowed outside, falling softer, almost reverently, as if the storm were listening too. He said humanity had always known fragments of it, whispered through prophets and scientists, but never the whole pattern. The law, as we understood it, was a shadow of the real mechanism, a child's sketch of an infinite equation. 3 days. That was all he asked. 3 days to travel through this plane, and in return, I would see the truth that underlies creation, the force that bends time, probability, and emotion into form. The stillness deepened. I didn't agree. I didn't refuse. Somewhere between fear and fascination, I realized consent had already happened. Because in the silence between thought and word, the engine turned on by itself, and Jaylen was suddenly sitting beside me. The road was a river of glass stretching into endless black. The rain had softened into mist, a shimmering curtain that caught the moonlight in strange, fractured ways. The car moved on its own rhythm now, steady, deliberate, as though guided by something far older than the mechanics beneath the hood. Jaylen sat beside me in perfect stillness. He didn't breathe, didn't fidget, didn't blink. His presence filled the small cabin like a low, silent hum, an awareness that pressed against my thoughts until they felt too loud. The headlights carved through the fog, and every droplet seemed to pulse faintly as if alive. Jaylen watched everything, the rhythm of the wipers, the flicker of passing signs, the distant glare of trucks roaring by. There was curiosity in him, but not human curiosity. It was observation without judgment, a scientist watching a living system unfold. His gaze lingered on the reflection of the moon, rippling across the wet glass, and I felt the question before he even spoke it. He said the universe listens differently than we believe. That we don't attract what we want, only what we are. His words didn't sound like philosophy. They sounded like law. They carried weight, the kind of certainty only something that has seen the architecture of existence could possess. I remember thinking how absurd it was, how human desire could not shape anything beyond emotion. And yet, something deep within me shifted at the sound of his voice. The air inside the car thickened. Every thought felt magnified. I tried to dismiss it, tried to laugh, but my laughter broke too quickly, swallowed by the hum of the engine. For a moment, I could swear the rain was falling in sync with my heartbeat. Then the radio came alive. No static, no signal, just my own voice, repeating the exact words that had just passed through my mind. It wasn't echo, it was replication. Perfect, cold, timed to my thoughts. The voice on the radio said the same phrase over and over, in my tone, in my cadence, as if mocking the boundaries between idea and sound. I looked at Jaylen, but he wasn't looking at me. He was listening, eyes closed, as if tuning into a frequency only he could hear. The sound faded as quickly as it began. Silence returned, but the silence no longer felt empty. Jaylen turned his gaze back to the windshield. The mist outside had taken on a faint glow, bending the light into spirals. He said nothing more, but I understood. The world was already responding. Reality was beginning to rearrange itself, not around what I wanted, but around who I truly was. The storm had faded into a whisper, leaving the road slick and shining beneath the pale wash of dawn. A faint mist clung to the trees, blurring the horizon like the world itself was waking from a dream. Inside the car, there was only the hum of the tires and the quiet vibration that always seemed to follow Jaylen wherever he was. It wasn't sound. Not really. It was resonance, like my bones had become an antenna for something I couldn't quite understand. He said that thought is not what humans think it is. We imagine ideas as sparks inside the brain, tiny flashes of chemistry and current. But according to him, the brain is not the source, it's the receiver, a translator of signals that already exist outside of us. Consciousness, he said, does not live behind the eyes or within the folds of the skull. It's everywhere. A field surrounding all things, connecting everything that has ever existed. The body is just the vessel that listens. His words pressed into my mind like data more than speech. They carried a weight that felt physical, as if reality itself adjusted slightly to make room for them. He explained that every thought has frequency. a measurable pulse that ripples through the invisible web, binding all matter together. The stronger the emotion behind a thought, the clearer the wave becomes. Love sharpens it. Fear distorts it. Belief bends the field like gravity. Outside, the landscape seemed to respond. The fog shifted in slow, swirling patterns, moving in harmony with something unseen. Jaylen said the field listens, always. That every human being is constantly broadcasting, shaping, and rearranging the world without ever realizing it. The field does not discriminate between good or bad, right or wrong, it only echoes coherence. When your thoughts and emotions align, the frequency stabilizes, and reality begins to obey. I began to feel the truth of it rather than understand it. My skin tingled, my chest felt weightless, and for an instant I could see faint distortions in the air, like heat mirages bending the light. Jaylen told me that belief is geometry. Every conviction changes the shape of the field around you, and those shapes determine what becomes visible in your reality. We don't create from nothing. We tune into what already exists in infinite potential. The silence that followed was not empty. It was charged. I realized then that every fear, every desire, every thought I had ever allowed to live inside me had been a signal, and the universe, indifferent and precise, had always been listening. The road stretched endlessly ahead, silent except for the hiss of tires against wet asphalt. The night had settled into an eerie calm, the kind that feels staged, like the world was holding its breath. Jaylen hadn't spoken for what felt like hours. His presence was constant though, a gravity that filled the space even when no sound was exchanged. I could feel thought itself moving between us, wordless, precise, ancient. Without warning, the car began to shudder. The dashboard flickered once, then again, before every light on it dimmed to black. The hum of the engine died, leaving the world swallowed by stillness. The headlights went out, and in that sudden absence of light, I could feel my heart beating too loud, too fast. The silence wasn't empty. It was heavy, charged, aware. The air grew cold, sharp enough to sting when I breathed. I tried to start the engine, but the key turned uselessly. Nothing responded. Even the rain outside seemed to freeze midair, as if time itself had forgotten to move forward. For the first time since this began, I felt it pure, unfiltered fear. Not the kind that comes from danger, but the kind that comes from understanding that something vast and intelligent is watching you think. Jaylen's voice entered my mind again, calm and unwavering. He said fear collapses probability, that every possibility in the universe exists simultaneously, like an ocean of outcomes, and fear is the one emotion that makes that ocean solidify around failure. It doesn't punish, it just obeys. The universe listens and follows the loudest signal, and fear, he said, is the most powerful broadcast most humans ever send. The dashboard lights flickered once more, faint and blue. Then they began to move, patterns shifting across the plastic surface, pulsing in rhythm with my heartbeat. Jaylen was showing me, not telling me. I felt it in my chest, the way emotion ripples through space. When I breathed slower, the lights steadied. When fear gripped me again, they dimmed, like the world itself was sinking to my internal chaos. He said the field doesn't interpret emotion as good or bad. It only mirrors what it receives. When a mind is afraid, it tells the universe to stop creating, to freeze every unfolding path. Fear is the command to halt existence. The car came back to life slowly, engine purring softly as the lights returned to their natural glow. But something inside me remained changed. I realized then that fear wasn't just an emotion, it was architecture. And every time I gave into it, I was building walls inside reality itself, trapping my own future behind the static of my own mind. The sky had begun to pale at the edges, a faint silver bleeding into the horizon. The storm was gone, leaving only mist rising from the asphalt like the world was exhaling after a long-held breath. The hum of the tires returned, steady and rhythmic, a heartbeat beneath the quiet. Jaylen had not spoken for some time. He sat still, eyes fixed on the road ahead, his presence both comforting and unnerving, like a shadow that refused to belong to the light. When his voice finally returned, it wasn't sound. It was vibration, an awareness threading itself into thought. He told me to think of someone from my past, not just anyone, someone who had changed me in a way I never wanted to admit. I resisted at first, but his silence pressed against me until the memory surfaced on its own. Her name carried weight even now, the woman who had once promised forever and left me hollow instead. As the thought of her took form, the radio flickered to life. It had been dead since the last storm, but now it buzzed with faint static. Then, through the distortion, a melody emerged. It was her song, the one that had played the night she walked away. I felt the air tighten, every nerve aware of something unseen moving through it. Jaylen didn't look at me. He didn't need to. His awareness filled the space like light seeping into water. He said the words that broke whatever illusion I had left. I did not attract her betrayal. I attracted the lesson. The sentence didn't sound like comfort. It sounded like truth, the kind that cuts before it heals. He said the universe doesn't send people to hurt you, it sends mirrors. Every person who wounds you is showing you what you still believe about yourself. Every heartbreak is a reflection of your own doubt made visible. The thought sank deep, slow, and heavy. I saw patterns I had ignored for years, faces changing, but the same endings repeating. Every failure, every betrayal, every disappointment traced back to the same origin, me. The constant variable in every equation of loss. Outside, the mist thickened, forming shapes that twisted briefly before fading. It was as if my memories were taking form in the fog, revealing themselves in fragments. Jaylen said that when you refuse to learn from reflection, the universe repeats it louder, again and again, until you finally listen. I understood then that suffering wasn't random. It was design, not punishment, but curriculum. Every heartbreak I had blamed on others was simply the universe holding up a mirror, and I was finally being forced to look. Morning light began to spread across the sky, pale and hesitant, filtering through a low mist that shimmered like smoke over the distant hills. The rain had stopped completely now, leaving the air washed clean and electric, charged with something that felt alive. Jaylen sat quietly beside me as we drove through the emptiness. Every few minutes, he would glance at the horizon, as if reading something written in the light that I couldn't see. The silence between us was not awkward. It was deliberate, almost sacred. When he finally spoke, the words arrived without sound, sliding effortlessly into my thoughts. He said that humanity had misunderstood one of the oldest truths in the universe. What we called the law of attraction, he called a distortion, an incomplete echo of something far more intricate. Humans, he said, had turned a sacred science into a marketplace. They had reduced creation to wish lists and affirmations, chanting for wealth, beauty, and affection, thinking the universe was a vending machine for desire. He said we do not attract cars, or money, or lovers. We attract states of consciousness that generate them. The universe does not deliver objects. It delivers reflections of vibration. When you think of abundance, the field doesn't give you currency. It gives you the emotional and mental frequency of abundance. It makes you act, feel, and see as abundance does. And from that state, the physical form emerges naturally. But humans chase the shadow instead of the source, mistaking symbols for essence. Outside, the landscape shifted. The morning fog split apart, revealing sunlight scattered through the trees, and for a moment, it looked as though the world itself was breathing. Jaylen explained that consciousness is not a force trying to fulfill your wishes. It is an orchestra responding to your tuning. When you vibrate in discord, life mirrors confusion. When you reach harmony, life aligns. It isn't attraction, it's resonance. The car's reflection shimmered faintly in a puddle as we passed, the image rippling and reforming. It was a quiet metaphor for what he meant. The reflection only moves when you do. The field never resists, it only repeats. Jaylen said that the law of attraction became corrupted because humanity forgot the foundation it was built upon. Coherence. They speak affirmations with doubt in their hearts, hoping sound alone will shift the universe. But the universe does not respond to words, it responds to the emotion beneath them. Thought without resonance is noise. Desire without belief is static. The road ahead seemed infinite, stretching into a horizon too bright to look at directly. Jaylen's final words lingered in my mind, resonant and unshakable. The universe is not your servant, it is your mirror, and it reflects only the music you are brave enough to become. By the time the sun reached its peak, the air had taken on a strange, silver stillness. The clouds had thinned into veils of light, and the road wound through a landscape that looked almost unreal. Half-forgotten buildings, empty fields, and distant hills shrouded in quiet mist. Jaylen asked me to stop the car near what used to be a gas station. The structure stood crooked, swallowed by rust and vines, a relic of another time. The wind moved softly through the broken windows, whispering through the hollow pumps like an echo of the lives that once passed here. We sat in silence for a long while. The windows began to fog, and the air inside felt charged, as though the world was holding its breath. Jaylen turned toward the glass, lifting one long finger, and began to trace patterns in the condensation. They weren't random. Circles within circles, lines intersecting in precise angles, forms that seemed familiar and yet ancient, carrying a geometry that stirred something deep in me. It was beautiful and unsettling, a language of light hidden behind symbols. He said these were not drawings, but maps, sacred geometries that mirrored the structure of the quantum field. Every line represented motion, every curve represented possibility. He told me that reality is not built from matter, but from waves of potential vibrating in infinite combinations, waiting for consciousness to choose which one becomes real. Thought, he said, is the key that collapses potential into form. Observation gives birth to existence. The car felt smaller then, as if the air itself had thickened with invisible energy. He said that creation is not linear. Time doesn't move forward. It folds. Every choice made in the present reshapes what the future can be. Every emotion alters the probability field surrounding it. Humans, he said, think they are moving toward the future, but in truth, the future moves toward them, guided by resonance. We do not chase destiny, we summon it. Outside, the light shimmered faintly, bending at odd angles, like heat over asphalt. I could feel the space around me vibrating softly, humming in rhythm with my pulse. Jaylen said that the universe is an endless field of probabilities, each one existing simultaneously until we decide which version of reality to believe in. Belief is not imagination, it is architecture. The fog on the glass began to fade, and with it, the symbols disappeared. Yet something lingered in the air, a quiet awareness that what I had always called reality was nothing more than a fragile agreement between perception and choice. The road ahead no longer looked solid. It looked alive, waiting for the next thought to decide where it would lead. The afternoon light had turned soft and golden, stretching across the empty highway in long ribbons of warmth. The world outside seemed quieter now, stripped of motion, except for the faint shimmer of heat rising from the pavement. We had driven for what felt like hours in silence, and I could sense that Jaylen was waiting for something, a threshold in understanding that words alone could no longer cross. He told me that belief without experience is just theory, and theory is powerless until the mind witnesses its own reflection in reality. The field, he said, responds not to thought, but to conviction, to the vibration of absolute knowing. It was time to prove it. He instructed me to close my eyes, clear the noise in my mind, and imagine something simple, something with color and form. He suggested a red balloon. I focused on it, at first awkwardly, as if forcing a dream into shape. I pictured its texture, the glossy skin catching sunlight, the faint scent of latex, the string brushing against my wrist as it swayed in invisible wind. Jaylen told me not to think about wanting it. Wanting meant distance. Wanting meant absence. I had to feel it as if it already existed, somewhere just outside the edge of visibility, waiting to drift into view. The air inside the car thickened, vibrating faintly like a held note. The longer I focused, the more real it became, not as an image, but as a presence. It felt absurd, yet deeply familiar, like remembering something I hadn't lived yet. Minutes passed. Then Jaylen told me to open my eyes. The road stretched empty ahead, sunlight bleeding through a haze of dust. I almost laughed, ready to dismiss the exercise as imagination, when a low hum approached from behind us. A truck came into view, an old flatbed, engine rumbling as it passed, and tied to its wooden frame were clusters of red balloons, bright and impossibly vivid, dancing in the wake of its motion. For a moment, everything inside me went still. The rational part of my mind clawed for explanation, coincidence, timing, trick of perception, but the deeper part of me knew better. The timing was too perfect, too deliberate. Jaylen looked at me, his expression unreadable but calm, like a teacher watching a child take their first step into truth. His voice came quietly, but it carried through every part of me. Coincidence, he said, is just physics you do not yet understand. The red balloons vanished into the horizon, their color staining the air like memory. And in that stillness, I realized the universe had just spoken in its own language, and it had spoken back to me. Night had returned, slow and soundless, folding itself over the sky like a living curtain. The road was darker than before, a narrow ribbon stretching into infinity beneath the pale shimmer of distant stars. The headlights reached only so far before being swallowed by the unknown. Jaylen hadn't spoken for some time, and the silence between us had grown heavy again, though not empty. It felt full, dense with meaning, as if the air itself was waiting for something to be understood. He finally broke the quiet, not through words, but through a thought that arrived fully formed inside my mind. Creation, he said, demands responsibility. It is not a gift, it is a weight. Every thought you release, every emotion you amplify, every belief you hold becomes a command to the field that shapes reality. Nothing ever disappears. Everything echoes. I felt those words ripple through me, the way light ripples across the surface of water. He said that when a being becomes aware of how reality truly functions, ignorance is no longer protection. The field begins to listen more closely. Each desire, each fear, each word becomes a thread in the web of timelines branching infinitely from the now. Every wish spawns worlds. Every fear does the same. And each one demands to be lived somewhere. He explained that the human mind was never meant to hold infinite creative power without understanding its cost. Desire, when born from lack, creates imbalance. Fear, when left unchecked, amplifies chaos. Each vibration spills outward into the shared consciousness of the species. What one mind creates, another may experience. We are not separate, he said, but mirrors of the same field, endlessly reflecting one another's choices. Outside, the night seemed to respond to his words. The stars pulsed faintly, as though in rhythm with his thoughts. The air shimmered with invisible movement. He said that every act of creation rearranges probability for others. A single fearful thought can ripple across lifetimes, influencing choices, altering paths, creating entire histories that never should have existed. Humans call it coincidence, but in truth, every coincidence is a collision of someone's intention with another's reality. The realization hit like cold wind. My own mind, my negativity, my doubts, all of it had been shaping not just my life, but the world around me. Every time I complained, feared, or despaired, I had sent frequencies into that field. Each one had woven itself into the lives of others without my knowing. Every stranger who crossed my path, every random moment I had dismissed, could have been the echo of my own energy, returning in another form. Jaylen said creation is sacred because it connects everything. When you desire something, the universe doesn't simply hand it to you. It must rearrange the web of countless lives, bending probability, altering alignment. Every gain is a ripple that travels through the field, touching everything it passes. To create consciously, one must be willing to accept that nothing happens in isolation. The car felt alive now, humming faintly beneath us. The road ahead seemed to blur, the stars streaking slightly as if space itself had thinned. Jaylen told me that advanced civilizations learned long ago that creation is not about manifestation, it is about harmony. They build not from want, but from understanding. They move carefully, knowing that every thought births a universe. Humanity, he said, is still a child, wishing for power without seeing the weight it carries. I sat in silence, feeling the enormity of it all pressing against my chest. The world suddenly seemed fragile, like glass vibrating on the edge of a song too deep to hear. I realized then that I was not a victim of circumstance. I was a participant in creation, complicit in every beauty and every tragedy I had ever witnessed. Jaylen's final words for that night came softly, a whisper inside my mind that lingered long after. Nothing you think is ever small. Every thought touches eternity. Every emotion alters the shape of time. The price of creation is knowing that you are responsible for all of it. And as the stars blurred above and the hum of the car merged with the rhythm of my heartbeat, I began to feel that truth sinking into me like gravity, inescapable, endless, and alive. The road narrowed into a forgotten stretch of highway that seemed to vanish into mist. Cracked asphalt, scattered gravel, and the skeletons of streetlights, long dead, lined the edges. The car's headlights cut thin tunnels through the dark, illuminating dust that swirled like ash. Jaylen had grown quiet again, his gaze distant, fixed on something I couldn't see. The silence between us wasn't just absence of sound, it felt ancient, almost reverent, like the hush that settles before revelation. When he spoke, the words didn't come from beside me, but from everywhere at once. He said his kind had walked this world before, long before written memory, before the oldest stories carved into stone. They were known by many names, but they called themselves the architects. Not a race of flesh, but of resonance. Beings who understood the geometry of thought and could mold the fabric of existence through the precision of intention alone. Their civilization was built not from stone or steel, but from frequency and light. Every structure, every creation, was harmonized to the consciousness of its maker. Jaylen said that humanity was never meant to worship them. The architects came not as gods but as teachers, to show early humans the blueprint of reality, the laws that govern vibration, energy, and creation. They taught that every thought builds, every emotion sculpts, and that the universe is a mirror of the mind observing it. But something went wrong. Curiosity turned into reverence. Reverence turned into worship. And worship, he said, is the death of understanding. When humans began kneeling instead of learning, the architects withdrew. They sealed their knowledge in fragments, scattering it through symbols and scriptures, embedding truth within myth so it could survive the corruption of time. Those fragments became the seeds of philosophies, The world still whispers through Hermetic principles, Vedic teachings, the esoteric science buried in quantum mysticism. Humanity remembers them only as legend, as divine inspiration. But they were never divine. They were reflections of what humans could become. Outside, the landscape shimmered faintly, and for a moment, I thought I saw shapes forming within the fog towers of light and sound, faint outlines of something that once existed where only silence remained now. Jaylen said the remnants of their work still hum beneath the Earth's surface. Every ancient temple aligned to the stars was not built for worship, but for resonance. Each was a machine of consciousness, designed to tune the human mind to the field. He said the architects watched as humanity drifted further into forgetfulness. Power replaced wisdom. Control replaced creation. The knowledge that once elevated became fractured, buried beneath systems of faith and fear. And yet, they did not vanish entirely. Some stayed, blending among us, disguised by frequency, existing just outside the narrow band of human perception. They have always been here, observing, waiting for humanity to remember itself. The air inside the car pulsed softly, as if the world outside had begun to vibrate in rhythm with his words. I felt something shift inside me, an ancient memory that didn't belong to this lifetime stirring awake. It wasn't recognition of him, but of the truth in what he said. A faint echo, as though somewhere deep in the human mind, we all remember building worlds with thought before we learned to build walls with fear. Jaylen's presence seemed brighter now, his form less solid, more like the outline of light learning to take shape. He said that the architects never left to punish, but to preserve balance. The universe cannot grant creation to those who see themselves as powerless. Humanity must rediscover resonance, not through worship, but through awareness. When that happens, he said, the architects will no longer be remembered as gods, they will be recognized as mirrors. The words hung in the air like a vibration too deep to fade. The world outside remained still. Yet I could feel the ground itself humming, as if the bones of the earth remembered what my species had forgotten. I realized then that the story of humanity was not about evolution from ignorance. It was about amnesia. And the truth of what we were meant to become had been whispering to us from the beginning, disguised as myth, waiting to be remembered. The night had deepened into a strange kind of stillness, the kind that hums beneath the skin rather than around it. The sky above was clear now, vast and indifferent, scattered with cold stars that seemed too sharp to be real. The road had narrowed to a thread of silver under the moonlight, and every sound, the engine, the tires, even my breath felt softer, as though muffled by invisible hands. Jaylen hadn't spoken since the last revelation. His silence carried weight, the kind that makes the air itself listen. When his voice finally returned, it was quiet but absolute, a vibration threading through thought rather than sound. He spoke of the paradox of desire. He said that when a mind craves, it declares lack. To desire something is to tell the universe that it does not exist. The more one reaches, the further it moves away. The universe mirrors the emotion beneath the wanting, not the words that dress it. If you crave, you affirm absence. If you trust, you allow presence. As he spoke, I felt something shift inside the air of the car. It grew thinner, like the space between moments was stretching. A faint hum began to pulse through the steering wheel beneath my fingers, subtle but rhythmic, the pulse of something unseen. I turned my head to look at him and he wasn't there. The passenger seat was empty. For a moment, everything stopped. The hum of the engine fell silent, the headlights dimmed, and the world outside seemed to fade into a void too dark to have depth. My thoughts turned frantic, spinning through panic and disbelief. The space beside me felt wrong, hollow, the way a room feels after someone you love has died in it. There was presence in the absence, something watching from the gap itself. Then the voice came back. Not from around me, but from within. Calm, steady, unshaken. Desire without trust creates emptiness. The words echoed softly, vibrating through every cell like a current. I looked back at the seat, and he was there again. No movement, no return, just existence, as if he had never left at all. His expression was neither stern nor kind, it was truth made visible. He told me that most of humanity lives in that space between wanting and believing, trapped in the hollow frequency of yearning. When you desire without trust, you create resistance. You push what you seek further into potential instead of allowing it to unfold. True creation, he said, comes from surrender, not from grasping. The universe cannot fill a clenched hand. Outside, the wind began to stir, carrying faint currents of static that danced across the windows like phantom lightning. I could feel it then, the truth in what he said. All the times I had prayed, begged, or wished for something while doubting its arrival had only strengthened its absence. My longing had been the architect of my emptiness. Jaylen said the paradox is what keeps humanity chained to seeking instead of knowing. Desire is a doorway, but trust is the step through. To crave is human, to believe is divine. And until the two become one, we wander endlessly through worlds of our own unfulfilled creation. The air in the car returned to normal, the engine alive again, the hum fading into silence. Yet something within me had shifted, as if I had finally heard the quiet secret behind every unanswered prayer. The universe had never been ignoring me. It had only been waiting for me to stop reaching and start allowing. The road wound endlessly ahead, a silver thread through a sea of darkness. The moon hung low, painting the edges of the clouds in a dim white glow that looked almost ancient. The air had grown heavy, thick with the scent of rain that had never fallen. We drove for hours without a word. Jaylen's silence wasn't absence, it was invitation, a space large enough for truth to echo. The hum of the engine became a metronome to my thoughts. Slow, rhythmic, almost hypnotic. He didn't need to speak for the questions to begin. They arrived the way dreams do, unannounced, unfolding softly inside the mind until you realize you've been answering them all along. He asked, when I stopped believing I was worthy. The question hit like gravity. I didn't need to search for the answer. I felt it rise from somewhere buried too deep for years. It wasn't one moment. It was a slow erosion, like water wearing down stone. Every disappointment, carving small truths I had mistaken for facts. Every failure, every rejection, every quiet humiliation that taught me to shrink. He asked what my dream had been before I let it die. I saw flashes, childhood memories, ambitions I hadn't said aloud in years. The person I thought I would become, the one who still existed somewhere behind the noise. I admitted I gave up on all of it. I said it didn't make sense to keep believing in something that no longer seemed possible. Jaylen's voice entered the space like the wind through an open window. He said, disbelief is the most powerful manifestation of all. It is faith inverted. When you stop believing in your own worth, you create proof of that belief in every corner of your life. Reality obeys your certainty, not your hope. You will never receive what you think you deserve. You will receive what you are convinced you cannot. The air seemed to hum with his words. Outside, the landscape shifted, trees bending slightly, as though reacting to some unseen force. I realized that disbelief, the quiet kind that hides behind cynicism, had shaped more of my life than any dream ever had. Every time I had told myself something was impossible, the universe had agreed. Every time I had felt unworthy of love, of peace, of success, it had mirrored that conviction with precision. Jaylen said that the field of creation is not moral. It doesn't reward good intentions or punish doubt. It reflects frequency, and disbelief is a frequency so strong it reshapes everything around it. To say "I can't" is to write a command into the code of existence itself. The truth of it settled like a weight in my chest. The night outside was quiet, but it no longer felt empty. It felt aware, as if listening to the realization take form. I thought of all the years I had mistaken self-protection for wisdom, doubt for realism. I thought of the countless times I had said, maybe someday, without realizing I was saying never. Jaylen said that belief isn't born from evidence, it creates it. The universe waits for coherence, not proof. The moment you stop doubting your worth, the field shifts to match it. Every path, every chance, every connection rearranges itself around that new vibration. I looked ahead at the horizon, where the faintest light was beginning to bloom. It wasn't dawn yet, but it was coming. And for the first time in years, I understood that the distance between who I was and who I could become had never been measured in time. It had only been measured in belief. Dawn crept slowly over the horizon, its first light a thin veil of silver spilling through the trees. The rain had long since faded, leaving behind a stillness so fragile it felt like breathing too loudly might shatter it. Jaylen asked me to stop near a lake that seemed to appear out of nowhere, hidden by mist and shadow. Its surface was impossibly still, like glass stretched across eternity. The air smelled of earth and silence. The world felt suspended between one heartbeat and the next. We stepped out into the quiet. The lake was more than reflection, it was memory. Its surface captured everything, from the pale blush of the rising sun to the faint tremor of my breath. I moved closer, and for a long moment, I didn't see water at all. I saw depth without bottom, like the sky had been turned upside down. It didn't feel like I was looking at the world, it felt like the world was looking back. Jaylen's presence beside me was less visible than felt, a vibration in the air that seemed to harmonize with the pulse of the earth itself. He told me that reality mirrors the inner self, but always with delay. The field echoes your vibration, but it takes time for that echo to become visible. That delay, he said, is mercy. Without it, every fleeting doubt, every dark thought, every fear would shape the world instantly. The pause is the universe's kindness space, to realign before your reflection solidifies. I stared at my own image in the water, watching the faint ripples form where my breath met the morning air. Then something impossible happened. The reflection moved before I did. My hand was still, yet the image of it wavered, lifted slightly, as if the version beneath the surface was alive, independent. The air thickened around me. Jaylen's voice threaded through the silence, saying that what we call physical reality is not solid but responsive, always waiting to match the frequency of the observer. He said that humans misinterpret reflection as cause and effect. We think life reacts to us, but it doesn't. It repeats us. The experiences we attract are delayed projections of inner belief. Ripples cast into the field long before they become events. The delay is a teacher. It gives time to choose differently before consequence arrives. The sunlight broke fully then, igniting the lake into a sheet of molten gold. My reflection blurred, split into light and shadow, and I understood that everything I called fate had once been a thought, a feeling, a moment of focus reflected back through time. My mistakes, my heartbreaks, even my fleeting joys, they were all old vibrations returning home. Jaylen said the lake was not showing me water. It was showing me time. Every reflection we meet in the world, every person, every challenge, every joy, is not separate from us. They are echoes of earlier choices, arriving just slow enough for us to learn. The delay is not punishment. It is grace. The mist began to lift, revealing the world in color again. The lake shimmered with quiet life, and my reflection had become still once more, perfectly synchronized. I felt lighter, though I didn't know why. Jaylen said nothing more. He didn't need to. The mirror had spoken, and I understood. The universe is patient because it loves us enough to wait for us to become what we are trying to see. The second day began beneath a pale, swollen sky that seemed to hum with quiet tension. The air was heavier than before, as if the atmosphere itself had become aware of what was unfolding. I hadn't slept. My mind had stayed awake all night, replaying every word Jaylen had spoken, every impossible thing I had seen. The reflections, the lights, the sound of my own thoughts, made real. It all lingered like a vibration that refused to fade. The highway was almost empty. Morning light crawled across the asphalt in slow golden ribbons. Jaylen sat in silence, watching me. Though he didn't need to speak, I could feel him observing not just my movements but my thoughts, the subtle shifts of emotion, the quiet doubts trying to form. He had told me the night before that reality mirrors frequency, not intention, and that I was broadcasting constantly. I wanted to believe him, but belief comes slowly to the human mind. Doubt is louder, so I decided to test it. The first thing that happened was small. My phone, which had no signal since the beginning of this journey, lit up with a notification. I hadn't touched it, hadn't even thought of it. Yet a message appeared from an old friend I hadn't spoken to in years. The words were simple, nothing extraordinary, just a memory shared. "Remember when you said you'd disappear and start over?" It was the exact thought that had been running through my mind seconds before. I tried to dismiss it as coincidence, but the timing was too sharp, too clean, as though the universe was answering. Then came the song. The radio flickered to life again, soft, static, bleeding into melody. It was a song from my childhood, one I hadn't heard in decades, yet it carried a weight I didn't expect. The lyrics spoke of beginning again, of forgiving oneself, of returning home. The words were mine, just rewritten by someone else long ago. I felt my chest tighten. Jaylen didn't react. He simply existed beside me, silent, like a tuning fork vibrating in agreement with the frequency I was unknowingly releasing. A few hours later, a deer crossed the road just as I was thinking of fear. It appeared from nowhere, eyes wide, frozen in the glare of the headlights. My heart stopped, but before I could brake, it leapt away unharmed into the forest. The moment passed, but the message lingered. My fear had summoned reflection again, instant, physical, undeniable. Jaylen finally spoke then, his voice low, threaded through the rhythm of my breath. "You are broadcasting constantly. Every thought, every feeling, every doubt is an order to reality." I began to watch the world differently after that. The shape of the clouds mirrored the emotions I didn't voice. Strangers I passed on the road carried the same expression I wore inside. Every object, every moment, began to echo me. I realized that the universe wasn't silent. It had been speaking in the language of alignment all along. I had simply never been listening. As the day stretched on, it became clear that creation wasn't something distant or mystical. It was immediate. Every second, I was shaping the next one. Every breath sent signals through a field that never stopped responding. The world around me had become a mirror too precise to be coincidence. Jaylen turned to me once more, his eyes faintly luminous in the late afternoon light. He said the words that now felt less like philosophy and more like law. "The field does not rest. You are speaking to existence every moment of your life. The question is not whether it hears you, it is whether you are ready to hear what you have already said." The sun was sinking low behind the hills when Jaylen began to speak again, his voice soft, almost blending into the hum of the car. The sky had turned amber, the kind of light that feels ancient, as if the day itself were remembering something. We had driven in silence for hours, and though the road ahead was straight, it felt as though we were spiraling deeper into something unseen. The landscape was still, yet alive, the trees swaying slightly as if listening, the horizon pulsing faintly with a light I couldn't name. He said humanity was never meant to manifest alone. Every human mind is not a separate point of consciousness, but a single cell in a larger organism. The species itself is one living field, a web of energy bound together by shared emotion and thought. The illusion of individuality, he explained, is a survival mechanism born from perception, but beneath that illusion, all are entangled. What you think is not confined to your skull. It travels. It merges. It alters. The idea sank into me like slow-moving light. He said wars, economies, revolutions, pandemics, every global phenomenon humanity believes is external, are not accidents of history. They are collective manifestations of shared vibration. When billions carry the same fear, the field creates its reflection. When billions desire control, the world mirrors hierarchy and power. What humans call society is only consciousness arranging itself into form. The car moved steadily through the growing dark, headlights carving a narrow path of gold through the emptiness. I felt a strange awareness rising in my chest, a sense that the air around us was alive, thick with invisible strands connecting everything. Jaylen said the collective field does not think in language. It feels. Every thought, charged with emotion, becomes a signal. And when enough minds broadcast the same frequency, that signal becomes reality. The earth is the instrument. Humanity is the player. He told me that if one person changes their internal dialogue, it does not end with them. Every adjustment in vibration, every healed emotion, every act of compassion resonates outward, subtly altering the frequency of the entire species. He said that when you heal yourself, you shift the geometry of the human field. You lessen chaos, even if no one ever knows your name. The smallest act of peace is an act of planetary recalibration. Outside, the first stars appeared, faint but pulsing, their light bending softly through the thin clouds. I felt a strange trembling in the air, like the whole world was exhaling. Jaylen said humanity's greatest mistake is believing creation begins with action. Creation begins with alignment. If 1,000 minds hold fear, the world will answer with crisis. If 1,000 minds hold love, it will rebuild itself without effort. The collective field does not distinguish between nations or names. It hears the dominant vibration and shapes the world to match it. I began to understand then that every thought mattered more than I could ever imagine. My private emotions were not private at all, they were ripples in a shared ocean. Every anger, every hope, every doubt had weight, bending reality in ways invisible but exact. Jaylen's words drifted through my consciousness like a current, gentle but absolute. Change your internal dialogue, he said, and you begin altering the species' frequency. The fate of humanity is not written by governments or gods. It is written by the collective mind, every unspoken fear, every fleeting prayer, every heartbeat contributing to the great vibration that builds the world anew each morning. The night outside glowed faintly, as if the stars themselves had drawn closer to listen. I realized then that every breath, every thought, every whisper of emotion was a thread in the same tapestry. And if enough of us remembered that truth, the entire fabric of reality would shift. The world was not broken. It was simply responding, waiting for the collective dream to change. By evening, the rain had returned, not as a storm, but as a gentle rhythm tapping against the car windows. The world outside was muted, soaked in twilight hues. We pulled into a small town that looked as though it had been forgotten by time, a single diner glowing faintly at the end of the street, its neon sign buzzing in the drizzle. Inside, the air was warm, thick with the scent of coffee and something sweet baking in the back. A few late travelers sat scattered in silence, their faces half lit by the soft hum of fluorescent light. Jaylen entered without hesitation, though his presence seemed to bend the room slightly, as if the air adjusted to make space for him. He took a seat at the far corner booth, by the window fogged with condensation, while I slid opposite him. The waitress arrived with a polite smile, pad in hand, ready to take our order. Before I could speak, Jaylen looked at her and said only 2 words. "I am full." His tone was calm, almost casual. She nodded distractedly, scribbled something, and walked away. I assumed he meant he wasn't hungry, that he didn't need anything. But moments later, she returned, balancing an extra plate of food, pancakes, eggs, and fruit, something she hadn't intended to bring. She laughed softly, apologizing for the mistake, saying the kitchen must have gotten the order wrong. Jaylen didn't correct her. He only looked at me, his expression unreadable, as if waiting for me to notice the meaning behind the moment. He said words are not sound, they are structure. Each syllable carries a frequency, and every frequency carries instruction. To speak is to sculpt reality. Most humans believe they use language to describe the world, but in truth, they use it to create it. Every word spoken is an act of design, a command encoded into the field that listens to everything. The difference is not whether it hears, but whether the speaker understands what they are saying. He told me that speech is vibration refined through consciousness. When a human says, "I am," the field moves immediately to fulfill whatever follows. Every affirmation is a seed planted in quantum soil. The universe does not question intent, it responds to tone, emotion, and coherence. When one says, "I am tired," it creates exhaustion. When one says, "I am lost," the field reorganizes itself to sustain disorientation. But when one speaks from trust, "I am whole," "I am ready," "I am light," those phrases bloom into tangible form because they are aligned with expansion rather than contraction. I looked at the plate between us, the food that had appeared from nothing but a declaration, and felt the quiet weight of understanding settle in. He said the architects once built entire civilizations with sound alone. They spoke structures into being, their words binding geometry to energy. The sacred languages humanity remembers, Sanskrit, Hebrew, the chants of ancient temples, were remnants of that science. Echoes of when humanity still knew that speech was creation. The rain thickened outside, blurring the street into watercolor streaks of gold and gray. I thought about every careless phrase I had ever spoken, every moment I had cursed, doubted, or belittled myself, and wondered how many of those words had become realities I was now forced to live within. Jaylen said that silence is not emptiness, it is incubation. When words are chosen with awareness, the field listens differently. Power, he said, does not come from speaking louder. It comes from speaking with truth. He leaned back slightly, the dim light catching the faint luminescence of his eyes. "Every word is a seed," he said again, "and what you harvest depends on the language you plant." Then he fell silent, and in that silence, the air seemed to hum with invisible bloom vibration, intention, and meaning, quietly rearranging the world one syllable at a time. The third night arrived without warning. It felt as though the day had folded in on itself, the sunlight fading too quickly, swallowed by the vast shadow of the mountain ahead. We climbed the winding road in silence, the car's headlights slicing through the darkness in narrow beams. The higher we went, the thinner the air became, sharp and metallic, carrying the scent of pine and cold stone. When we reached the overlook, Jaylen asked me to stop. The engine quieted, and the silence that followed was not empty. It was cosmic, endless, as if the world itself had paused to listen. Above us, the sky unfolded into infinity. Stars spilled across it like sparks scattered from a divine forge. The air felt alive with electricity, as though every atom had its own heartbeat. Jaylen stood still, looking out over the valley below, his form outlined faintly by the light of distant galaxies. I felt the weight of what was coming. The journey had felt timeless, but time was returning now, creeping back into awareness. I understood, even before he said it, that our encounter was nearing its end. He said he would soon leave, and the words carried no emotion, only inevitability. I wanted to ask where he would go, what came after this, but the questions dissolved before I could speak them. He turned toward me, his gaze serene and infinite, like he was seeing not me but everything that had ever been me across lifetimes. He said there was one final key, the truth that completes every law, every teaching, every revelation that came before. The universe does not respond to thought, it responds to coherence. He explained that the human mind is powerful, but it is fragmented. Thought alone is unstable, changing shape with every fear, every doubt, every moment of distraction. The universe is not moved by scattered frequency. It responds to harmony, to the alignment between what the heart feels and what the mind believes. When thought and emotion become one, when belief and love vibrate together, reality bends effortlessly. That is coherence. That is creation. The stars above seemed to pulse brighter as he spoke, their light flickering like silent applause. Jaylen said that most humans think they are manifesting through thought, but what they are really doing is contradicting themselves. The mind asks for abundance, while the heart beats with fear. The lips say, "I trust," while the chest whispers, "I don't." The field obeys the stronger signal, and the stronger signal always comes from the heart. The heart is not symbolic, it is literal. Its electromagnetic field is thousands of times stronger than the brain's, broadcasting emotion into the fabric of space. When the two align, even the impossible becomes ordinary. He lifted his hand toward the horizon, and for a moment, the night itself shimmered. The stars above rippled, subtly, as though the sky had exhaled. I realized he wasn't showing me power, he was showing me resonance. The same principle that could move mountains was the same one that shaped a thought into form. The universe was a mirror that didn't care for words or logic, it cared for vibration. The air around us grew still again. The silence was deep, reverent, almost sacred. Jaylen said that the final evolution of consciousness is not knowledge, it is coherence. The union of reason and love, science and soul, logic and surrender. To live in coherence is to speak with the same frequency as creation itself. The stars seemed closer now, their light pressing gently against the earth. The wind moved softly through the trees, carrying whispers that didn't belong to this world. I felt something inside me settle, a stillness that wasn't emptiness, but alignment. For the first time, I understood what peace actually meant, not the absence of chaos, but perfect synchronization with it. Jaylen's presence began to fade then, not vanishing but merging. He didn't walk away. He dissolved into the air, into the hum of existence itself. The last thing I heard wasn't a word, it was a resonance, a soundless chord vibrating through my chest. The stars seemed to echo it, as if the entire sky had joined in his final lesson. The universe doesn't respond to thought, it responds to coherence. And in that moment, for the first time in my life, I felt what coherence truly was. The alignment between everything I had ever feared, loved, doubted, and believed, woven into one single note that belonged not to me, but to everything. The world had fallen into a kind of stillness that didn't feel natural. The air was so calm it seemed to vibrate, like the silence that exists just before thunder. The car sat parked near the mountain's edge, its engine off, the faint ticking of cooling metal echoing through the dark. Stars hung above us, sharp and unblinking, their light cold and eternal. I could feel the thinness of the atmosphere, the way every breath came with effort, as if the higher we climbed, the more truth pressed against the lungs. Jaylen had not vanished completely. His form shimmered faintly in the darkness, part light, part presence, as though he existed halfway between matter and memory. When he finally spoke again, his voice carried not through the air but through vibration, settling in the bones instead of the ears. He said there is one force that stops creation more effectively than fear or ignorance, the law of resistance. Most humans, he said, ask while doubting. They reach toward their desires while pulling them back at the same time. Their minds send one command, but their hearts send another. The result is cancellation, two frequencies colliding and nullifying one another, like sound waves that meet and fall into silence. He told me that the universe doesn't deny those people. It simply cannot hear them clearly. Their signal collapses before it travels far enough to take form. Creation requires coherence, but doubt fractures it, splintering the message into fragments of hesitation. Every prayer uttered with uncertainty, every affirmation whispered with disbelief, every goal chased while secretly expecting failure, all of it sends conflicting orders into the field. The universe, ever obedient, mirrors the confusion perfectly. Nothing moves because everything contradicts itself. The car's interior grew colder. The small clock on the dashboard glowed faintly in the dim light. Jaylen turned his attention toward it, and for a moment, the ticking second hand froze. The silence deepened until I could hear my own heartbeat. He said, "Resistance freezes time. When you doubt, you trap energy in limbo. The flow of creation halts because your belief and disbelief battle for dominion, holding all probability hostage." He told me to breathe, not to think, not to focus, only to breathe. To let the air move through me, as if I trusted it to know what to do. I inhaled slowly, releasing the tightness in my chest, the worry I hadn't realized I'd been carrying. The air entered like light, steady and pure. Something inside me loosened. The moment I reached stillness, the clock began to move again. The second hand resumed its rhythm, smooth and unbroken, as though nothing had ever paused. Jaylen said that alignment is not effort, it is surrender. The universe does not reward struggle, because struggle is resistance disguised as determination. To create, you must trust the unseen to complete what you begin. He said that true power does not push, it allows. When the signal of belief is clean, reality rearranges itself without strain. Outside, a soft wind swept across the mountain, bending the trees below in slow waves. The stars seemed to shimmer brighter, their light no longer distant but near, almost breathing. I realized that every failure I had ever known was not the universe rejecting me, it was me rejecting it, through doubt, through hesitation, through fear disguised as logic. Jaylen's form flickered slightly, fading more with each passing moment, but his presence felt infinite. He said that resistance is not an enemy, it is feedback. It shows you where your faith still fractures. Each moment of doubt is an invitation to realign, to breathe again, to remember that the field does not judge, it only responds. As the stars reflected off the windshield, I stared at the clock still ticking, each second now sounding different, heavier somehow, as though each one was alive with purpose. I understood then that time itself obeys belief, that reality waits patiently for permission to move, and the moment you stop fighting, the universe exhales and everything begins again. The stars above seemed impossibly close that night, so near that I could almost imagine their light breathing against my skin. The world around us had fallen into complete silence, a silence so profound it felt alive, like it was waiting for something to be spoken into existence. Jaylen stood beside me at the edge of the overlook, a faint radiance surrounding him, blending with the starlight until it was hard to tell where he ended and the cosmos began. The air pulsed faintly, vibrating with the rhythm of something vast yet tender, something that made even the night itself feel conscious. He said that humanity misunderstands the word miracle. We treat it like an exception to the laws of nature, when in truth, it is their most perfect expression. A miracle is not a divine interruption, it is the physics of belief without interference. It is the alignment of mind and emotion so pure that reality has no choice but to conform. Jaylen said that faith is not religion. Faith is focus sustained beyond evidence. It is the art of holding your inner frequency steady, even when the external world hasn't yet caught up. As he spoke, the air around us shifted. The stars began to flicker in patterns, forming scenes echoes of memory, or perhaps windows into history itself. I saw ancient monks in the stillness of temples, their bodies unmoving for days, while their hearts pulsed in resonance with the earth. I saw healers laying hands over the sick, not summoning divine intervention, but transmitting coherence, tuning another human's frequency back into harmony. I saw scientists in sterile rooms staring at subatomic particles that danced differently under their gaze, their observation shaping the experiment even when they refused to believe it could. He said these were all the same act, separated only by language. The monk called it prayer, the healer called it faith, the scientist called it observation, but the field made no distinction. It responded to the same signal each time, concentrated awareness unpolluted by doubt. When belief reaches stillness, when no contradiction remains between the mind and the heart, creation has no resistance left. That is when miracles occur. The images shifted again, showing a man in rags, kneeling beneath a storm, whispering gratitude before the clouds broke open and light poured down on him. Then a woman standing before an empty canvas, her eyes closed, hands trembling until she opened them and painted what she had seen within her mind, a landscape that existed nowhere else until that moment. Jaylen said that these were not acts of magic, they were echoes of human potential, unfiltered. The air shimmered with gold for a brief moment, and I realized the night was not dark at all. It was illuminated from within, lit by the frequencies of every human who had ever believed fully, even for a second. Jaylen said that the universe is constantly bending toward coherence. Every act of faith, every moment of trust, however small, ripples outward, creating pockets of harmony that alter the probability of the entire field. We call them miracles only because we've forgotten that this is how creation is supposed to work. I felt something within me stir, an old understanding resurfacing from beyond memory. Every answered prayer, every impossible healing, every spark of genius that had ever changed the course of history was not supernatural. It was natural order revealed. The extraordinary had always been ordinary, waiting for someone to remember how to see it. Jaylen looked out over the valley below, the faint glow of distant cities shimmering in the night like constellations fallen to earth. He said that one day, humanity will stop asking for miracles and start becoming them. When that happens, the divide between science and spirit will vanish. The universe will no longer need to prove itself to the doubting mind, because the mind will finally understand it was never separate from the mechanism that moves the stars. The wind shifted gently, carrying the scent of pine and rain. I looked up at the sky, and for the first time, the stars didn't seem distant. They seemed responsive, like they were waiting for the next command from the quiet frequency of faith. Jaylen's words lingered, soft but certain. Faith is not belief without reason. It is focus beyond evidence. And the moment you master that focus, the miraculous becomes the ordinary language of creation itself. The horizon began to pale, the first light of dawn spilling across the world like the slow unveiling of a secret. The storm had long passed, leaving the land washed clean, glistening as though the earth itself had been reborn overnight. The air carried the scent of wet pine and cold stone, sharp and alive. The car moved down the silent road, the tires humming softly against the damp asphalt. It was the third morning, and though Jaylen had not said it, I could feel it in the stillness between us. Our journey was nearing its end. The road stretched endlessly ahead, but it no longer felt empty. Every mile felt heavy with memory, with truth, with the unseen patterns of everything I had learned. The sky above was clear now, and through the soft haze of dawn, the stars were fading one by one, their light retreating back into the invisible fabric they came from. Jaylen sat quietly in the passenger seat, eyes half closed, as though listening to something far beyond the reach of human perception. He finally spoke when the first rays of sunlight broke through the horizon, washing his form in soft gold. He asked me to stop at the same stretch of highway where this began, the same lonely road where I had first seen him standing in the rain, glowing faintly beneath a storm that felt older than time. There was a calm in his voice, a finality that needed no explanation. I slowed the car and pulled over to the shoulder. The world was quiet, except for the faint whisper of wind through the grass. Jaylen opened the door and stepped out, the early light clinging to him as if drawn by gravity. For a long moment, he stood there, looking at the horizon with an expression that wasn't sorrow or joy, but something greater: acceptance, maybe, or remembrance. He turned once toward me, his eyes shimmering faintly, and said that I would forget his face but not the vibration, that the memory of him was irrelevant, but the resonance would remain, the frequency of what I had learned, the echo of everything he had shown me. His form began to shift as he spoke, the edges of his figure dissolving into the morning air. Light poured from him, soft at first, then brighter, until it became impossible to look directly. It wasn't a flash, it was expansion, like he wasn't leaving but unfolding, merging back into something far larger than himself. For a moment, I thought I heard a sound low, deep, and resonant, like the universe breathing in reverse. Then there was only silence. The light faded slowly, leaving nothing behind but the outline of a man burned faintly into my memory and the stillness of dawn. The world felt heavier, yet strangely lighter at the same time, as if something unseen had been lifted from it. I sat there for what felt like hours, though time no longer carried meaning. Then I heard it. The faint hum of the radio, though I hadn't turned it on. Static whispered softly through the speakers, forming shapes of sound just above hearing. And through that static came a voice, my own voice, speaking the words I had not yet said aloud. "I understand." The phrase repeated once, twice, and then the radio fell silent again. The road ahead shimmered faintly in the morning light. The air buzzed with invisible energy, the remnants of a conversation between worlds. I started the car, feeling a stillness inside me where chaos used to live. Jaylen was gone, but the vibration remained, echoing in every breath, every heartbeat, every fragment of reality that followed. And though I could not remember his face anymore, I knew I would never forget what he had awakened. Weeks passed, though time no longer felt linear. The days moved differently now, as if the air itself carried a softer rhythm, a hum I hadn't noticed before. The world looked the same on the surface, the same streets, the same sky, but something beneath it had changed. Or maybe it was me. The shift was subtle at first, barely perceptible, like the faint tremor before an earthquake. Then, without effort, everything began to rearrange. The small inconveniences that once filled my life, the delays, the frustrations, the constant weight of trying started to dissolve. Doors that had always been closed seemed to open on their own. Opportunities appeared from places I hadn't even thought to look. People I hadn't spoken to in years reached out, not by coincidence but by some quiet orchestration I could now feel rather than explain. Even the air around me carried a new texture, as though it had become aware of me too. But the changes weren't just external. Something inside had shifted more profoundly than anything I could see. The noise in my head, the endless static of self-doubt, fear, and overthinking had begun to quiet. In its place was stillness. Not emptiness, but a calm awareness, like the universe itself had taken residence behind my thoughts. I started to notice the small things that had always been there but drowned beneath the noise. The sound of wind threading through trees, the way sunlight trembled against glass, the rhythm of my own breathing syncing with the world around me. I realized that everything Jaylen had shown me was not a lesson to memorize, but an experience to embody. He had never truly taught me the law of attraction, not in the way humans define it. He hadn't told me how to get what I wanted. He had shown me what it meant to be heard. Reality, I understood now, wasn't something distant that needed convincing. It was a mirror, patient and precise, waiting for coherence. I began to test it without trying to. When I moved through the day with trust, things unfolded seamlessly. When I slipped into doubt, I could feel the delay, like a skipped heartbeat in the rhythm of creation. The universe didn't punish hesitation, it simply paused, waiting for alignment to return. The field, the mirror, the frequency, whatever name I gave it, it responded to presence, not effort. It listened to vibration, not words. Old habits began to fall away. The constant reaching, the endless striving to force things into existence, vanished like fog at sunrise. I no longer asked the universe to deliver anything. I simply listened to it breathe. I understood that every moment, every emotion, every choice was communication. Every sigh of gratitude was an act of creation. Every thought of peace was a blueprint reshaping the invisible. One evening, I stood outside beneath the same sky where Jaylen had disappeared. The stars shimmered faintly above, distant yet intimate, each one a pulse in the same vast consciousness. The world felt alive not because it had changed, but because I finally could hear it. The silence that once frightened me now spoke clearly, filled with meaning too subtle for words. And in that quiet, I remembered what he had said before leaving, that I would forget his face, but not the vibration. He was right. His features had faded in memory, but the frequency remained, woven into everything I touched, everything I felt. It was no longer his presence I carried, it was understanding. The wind rose gently, curling around me like breath. The hum of life vibrated faintly in the distance, the same hum I had once mistaken for silence. And as I stood there, I finally understood the truth that had always been waiting to be heard. The universe was never ignoring me. I was the one speaking in static.